the test. Great.
Test. 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 Test, test. Test. There we go. Test. 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 Okay. I think we're all set.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Thank you. All right. How are you? going around.
Yeah, that's where I use this cold. So I.
Oh, that better help. I don't want to be in the way. Yeah, almost there. Thank you.
Yes. Oh, the microphone looks. I'm gonna be down. Oh. Yeah. Oh, good. So share your notes. Oh. Tomorrow we have a lot of pictures. Oh, there's such a kid. Oh, we got, yeah. Yes, we have. Two. Oh, no, that was changed. The financial report? Yeah, it's changed. To the 25th. To the 25th, it's 3:00. You just got a notice about an hour. Oh, okay. But it was- So, what would you do with your column?
Went around to all the.
Oh, of course, I asked you that. Yeah. You know,
Well, this is one.
I was going to market, we take a bunch together.
And a very interesting.
Real problem.
Keeps me busy.
Yeah. Oh, it's not a metal door. To the back. There's no doorbell.
I'll let Gary know.
There's no doorbell in the back. And very confusing. I'm telling her, why don't you come tell me?
That's okay, I understand, I understand. I'll tell Terry Chow, he's the director of CERT. What's this? I'll tell him.
That's Dana, that's Dana's.
It's Dana's screen.
Just,
That's Dana's screen.
oh, okay.
That has nothing to do with you.
That's a problem.
I think probably.
Then she's doing the Zoom maybe.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I didn't bring it.
Okay.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm Dana, Ringo, it's a week coordinator. Thank you so much for being here. Dana. So the reason we have set this is we have our in-house channel that we also show our programs for residents coming out here. And it's also on YouTube. No, it should be able to pick it up when you use the microphone.
Oh, I see. So.
Yeah, well, you should be able to do that. It's just to see in case you're sitting down there.
Okay. So,
But it'll pick up.
What I'm trying to say is where should I sit so people can see on the TV as well as?
Yeah.
So where should I stay? This is okay.
That's okay.
Okay. No, this.
Yeah, a small.
Yeah, just also where,
Yeah.
okay. And then I'll use that.
Yeah.
Back coming,
I'm gonna keep my.
back coming.
No, she's over at Villa Montalvo. Villa Montalvo with a friend.
Oh.
There's a fashion show tea kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, all right.
How about these fees, Rosen?
Just a little bit.
Maybe you want to show me the video?
At the end.
I'm gonna be sitting here.
Oh, okay.
Test, test.
Okay, I'm going to ask that if you can't hear, please raise two hands like this so that we know what's going on. Okay,
A little
All
louder.
right.
okay, is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right, but raise hands and also with our district attorney, you know, I don't want people sitting here and not being able to hear when you take the trouble to come. So do appreciate that you know that you're doing okay. I want to welcome people to Community Currents.
Can't hear you now.
Is that better?
Yeah, right next.
Okay, that's right, come on. Okay, I'm Erin Shane, and I'm the organizer of Community Currents. My goal is to find out what's going on outside of the terraces. As part of our recent series, we had our California representative, Evan Lowe, followed by Aaron Grimes from Trader Joe's. We need to stay informed, and we are curious. Sharon Ross suggested that it was time to have DA Jeffrey Rosen. He has a wife who is a lawyer and two daughters, and an official and well-known in the community. He has 640 employees, of which 196 are deputy attorneys. His background information is so overwhelming that it's hard to know where to begin in introducing him and also know where to end. He graduated from UCLA Phi Beta Kappa, summa cum laude, and won the Outstanding Senior Award. After graduating, he went to prestigious Boat Law School at UC Berkeley, where he was a top Moot Hall performer. He took a break to teach English as a second language to immigrants, and he had a brief stint in private practice. Many of us think of the DA as finding and prosecuting those that break the local and California or national laws, but it's not that simple. DA Jeffrey Rosen goes far beyond that. He is a humanitarian. He is nationally recognized leader in criminal justice reform. After listening to community leaders, he's backed legislation that will improve our justice system. I don't know if any of you were aware of the shooting that took place recently in San Jose. There were some people killed that were working for Valley Transportation Authority. He quickly assembled an assistance program with mental health professionals and also offered other needed aid. It served 130 individuals as part of a program to help those that are hurt. The list of his accomplishments goes on and on. I did research and I was reading so many papers about him and what he had done. I just couldn't believe that one individual could accomplish as much as he did. He implemented a 12-week parent project course completed by local families to keep young people out of the criminal justice system. He created and put in place a misdemeanor diversion program for low-level offenders.
You're fading.
He also backed the ending of cash bail. And the list of reforms goes on and on. After DA Rosen's presentation, we'll have a chance for questions. And then I also want to take a little bit of time to talk about the election that's coming up to see if we can do some clarifying along that line. Okay, at this point, DA Rosen.
Thank you very much, Marion, for that introduction. And if at any point you can't hear me, please just yell at me. That's just fine. And it's a little, speaking through a mask muffles my voice just a little bit, so I'll try to keep the microphone as close as possible. So I thought, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me. I grew up in Los Angeles, and for many years, my mom, when I was growing up, worked in a retirement community like this. And when I was in high school, some of the first public speaking that I did was in the retirement community where she worked. And so I learned a lot of useful things about public speaking: to speak loudly, slowly, clearly. And these are skills that I've carried with me in my profession as a district attorney. So a little bit about the mission of the district attorney's office. As Marion said, it's quite a large office because we have a very large county. We have about 650 employees. Almost 200 are prosecutors. About 100 are investigators. So they're basically police officers that work for the district attorney's office and help us to investigate crimes. We also run a crime laboratory, and we're very fortunate in our county laboratory, but we were one of the first counties to have one. I think it's the influence of the high-tech industry in this area, and the crime laboratory we have is really state-of-the-art. Blood work, DNA, cell phones, computers, firearms, anything that you see on TV, we do. Like if you've ever watched CSI, we do all of those things. It usually takes us a little longer than 45 or 50 minutes to solve it all, but we do exactly those things. And then we have about 250 people that support our attorneys and investigators. Really, the clerical staff is the backbone of our office. Our main office is in San Jose. Some of you have probably been to the courthouse on Henning Street at some point for jury duty. I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you've served on a jury. Yeah, okay. Now, I don't recognize any of my former jurors here, so our office is about a block. The main office is about a block from the courthouse. And then we also have a small office that serves the north part of the county in Palo Alto, and a small office in Morgan Hill that serves the southern part of the county. The mission of the DA's office is to vigorously pursue justice in a way that is fair and treats everyone equally and with respect. So I believe in holding people that commit crimes appropriately accountable. And what that accountability is, it depends on the crime, it depends on the person. For a very serious crime, it might be a long prison sentence. For a less serious crime, it might be a few weeks or a few months in jail. For many crimes, it's not jail, but it's some kind of program, a diversion program outside of the court system where the person makes restitution, pays back the harm they did to someone else, and takes some classes to learn about, say, anger issues or other kinds of, or alcohol or mental health issues. We file about 32,000 criminal cases per year. So on the one hand, 32,000 it's a big number, but of those cases, 80% of them are misdemeanor offenses, meaning less serious offenses. Crime in our county looks like a pyramid. At the base of the pyramid, right, the widest part of the pyramid are misdemeanors. So they're crimes, and they're important for us to prosecute. These are crimes like drunk driving, like petty theft, like vandalism. Those are good examples of misdemeanors. As you move up the sides of the pyramid, and the pyramid gets more and more narrow, the crimes become more and more serious. So let's say in our county last year, there were 45 to 50 murders in our county. And during the time that I've been DA, the number of murders in the county has been anywhere from, say, 35 to 50 murders per year. Now, is that a lot of murders or a few murders? Well, of course, one murder is one murder too many. So, but by a point of comparison to how many murders we had in our county, let's say in the 1980s or 1990s, in those decades, we had probably 120 to 150 murders per year. So we had more murders in the 80s and 90s than today. So we're on a good trend. But crime has kind of come up a little bit this last year. And then when you compare us to other counties in the Bay Area, like say Alameda County, where Oakland is, or San Francisco County, our murder rate is much, much lower than those places. So this is a very safe community to live in, but I don't rest on my laurels as the DA. We're always doing things to try to make crime lower. And the reason it's so, I would say there's a few different ways that we try to reduce crime in this community. So, of course, one way is when someone commits a crime and the police catch that person, we prosecute that person. And the reason we do that is One, our sense of justice requires that if someone breaks into someone's house or steals their car, they should be held accountable for that in some way. When someone is held accountable for a crime, if they're in jail or prison, depending on how serious that crime is, we know that while they're in jail or prison, they will not be committing crimes out here. So this is one way we keep crime low. But I'm also very interested, and I've been to many prisons in our state, and even prisons in other countries, like Germany. I'm very interested in prisons and jails that offer good opportunities to the people incarcerated to change their lives. Because if somebody is prosecuted, goes to prison, gets out and commits another crime, there's another crime victim. But if somebody's prosecuted, goes to prison, and they turn their life around, and they come out, and they're a productive, law-abiding person, well, that's a real win for our society. I mean, that takes somebody who was using resources from the state, right? Now this is a person working and paying taxes to the state. They're part of the community. They're not working against the community. So I've worked really hard to try to have in our local jail programs that will help individuals rehabilitate themselves. Marion mentioned the Parent Project, which is a program that helps parents with teenagers that are kind of at a fork in the road. And are they gonna stay on the straight and narrow, or are they gonna start using drugs or join a gang? And the Parent Project is meant to help, it's a 12-week course to help parents be better parents, to strengthen that family. Well, we offer that in the jail as well. Of course, many of the inmates in jail are mothers or fathers and have children. And we think if we can strengthen those families as well, there's less chance that, let's say that junior will go into the business that dad was in. In other words, we want to end the criminal behavior at her and not to the children. Another way that we reduce crime is by preventing it from happening in the first place. So we have community prosecutors. There are 6 of them that work in the most heavily crime impacted neighborhoods in our county. We're in Gilroy, we're in Sunnyvale, we're in East San Jose. And our community prosecutors are embedded in those communities. They work with churches and with neighborhood associations and service providers to really to remove graffiti, to keep young people from joining gangs, to get rid of blight. You know, blight is like when a street light is out and it's dark in one place at night, it sort of attracts criminals. Blight is a house or an apartment building that's abandoned, that no one is taking care of, and then criminals come there and do criminal activity. So these community prosecutors are working every day with our community to try to prevent crime from happening and to strengthen the bonds between law enforcement and the community. So often, the only time some people might see a prosecutor is in court prosecuting someone. And we want people in our community to also know that prosecutors are working to help a community not commit crimes to begin with. A third thing that we feel very strongly about in the DA's office is the reason that most of us became prosecutors is that we want to help people. I mean, that's honestly the truth. We want to help people. We want rules and laws to be applied fairly. We don't like when someone takes advantage of someone else. You know, I don't even like when somebody cuts in line, you know, if I'm at the grocery store or something. So we want things to be fair. And we also see the impact of crime close up. So before I became the DA, I was a deputy DA in the office for 15 years. And during that time, I prosecuted thousands of cases. My last 10 years, I prosecuted sexual assault, rape cases, child molestation cases, and murder. And I saw in a very personal way, the effect that crimes have, not only on the individual victim, but on their family, on their friends, on their neighborhood. And so one of the things that we're so proud of in the DA's office is that we have a victim services unit. So we have 50 people who work in our victim services unit, and they help victims of crime in many different ways. They will help them get reimbursement from the state for certain losses suffered. There's a lot of paperwork to fill out with the state, and our advocates help them do that. Our advocates also will go to court with them and sit in on any meetings with them and just be a support person. In fact, we have one of our victim advocates walks on 4 legs. His name is Percy. He's a black Labrador, and well, I tell you, I thought I got a lot of training to become a lawyer. Percy got a lot of training to be a service dog. It's very competitive to become a dog that can do all of these different things for us. And Percy has been a huge help to children and adults who are victims of crime, either while they are testifying or while they are talking with our prosecutors and investigators. And, I'm not really an animal person myself, but I see the impact that Percy has on people. And we're all human beings, and I very much desire in our office for everyone to be treated kindly and respectfully, particularly someone who's been the victim of a terrible crime. So our victim services unit is an integral part of everything that we do. And as Marion mentioned, our victim services unit was called out several weeks ago now, when there was a terrible mass shooting at the Valley Transportation Authority, and 9 individuals were murdered. So the way in which the DA's office responded to that tragedy was, number one, we worked with the Red Cross to very quickly set up a family assistance center for all of the family and friends of those 9 individuals that were tragically murdered. I was at the Family Assistance Center the night of the shooting when the medical examiner's office went around. The medical examiner came to give the death notifications to each of the families. And, there's some things that stay with you in life. There's some sounds and some things that you see that you don't forget. And the cries and the screams from the family members is something I will not forget. It was an awful, awful day. After that happened, I thought to myself, is there anything that could have been done to prevent this tragedy from happening? Is there anything that our society or that law enforcement could have done? I think there are some things that we could have done. I don't know if it would have changed what happened, but there were some things that we should have done. So I spent a lot of time talking to federal law enforcement about an interaction that they had with the shooter many years earlier. This was widely reported, where the shooter had books about terrorism and a notebook filled with hatred for his employees at Valley Transportation Authority. That information was never shared with the San Jose Police Department or the DA's office. The ultimate responsibility for this terrible crime is the perpetrators. I don't know if the feds had spoken to us, if it would have changed what would ultimately have happened. However, if that information had been shared, police officers would have spoken to him and would have spoken to people at Valley Transportation Authority. So we're going to do everything we can to encourage people to contact the police if they know of someone who is talking about killing themselves or killing others and has guns. This is what is called a red flag law, and we have these laws in California, and we use these laws a lot in our county. And I can assure you that the use of these laws has saved lives. I'll give you just one example. Someone became aware of an individual that was talking about going to a local shopping mall and with a backpack full of weapons with the intention to kill as many people as he could. The police were contacted, immediately went to this mall, and this was very tricky to coordinate because this individual was coming from a different county. We found this individual, we arrested this individual, we found the guns that the individual had on him, and then we got what's called a gun violence restraining order to remove those guns, as well as all the guns he had at home, at least temporarily, until the person could be evaluated. We have done this kind of gun violence restraining order more than 150 times in our county, and it has saved lives. It saved people from killing themselves and from killing others. So the BTA shooting, I think, is a good example of how I think about my role as the DA, which is to say, on the one hand, what can we do to help people that were the victims of a terrible crime? So we immediately provide counseling services, housing, meals. We partner with terrific organizations like the Red Cross. That's one way that we try to help. But a second way is to say, after a terrible thing happened, is there something we could have done better? We're not saying we did something wrong before, but could we have done anything better? And then let's do that. So I very much believe in always trying to improve and reform the DA's office. In my mind, I think to myself, we are a good DA's office, but we need to be a great DA's office. I'm never going to come and say, this is a perfect DA's office. I'm not going to say it's not, I'm not going to say I'm a perfect DA, it's a perfect DA's office. I'm not a perfect husband, I'm not a perfect son, I'm not a perfect father, and I don't know if anyone here is. So, but I think we have a very good DA's office, but part of why it's such a good DA's office is we're always trying to get better, always trying to get better. So let me take a step back and mention what I think are some big issues facing criminal justice. And criminal justice is just a fancy word for, crime in the community. What are some big trends that we're seeing? Number one, while crime remains low, it is a little higher than it was last year, particularly violent crime, particularly by very young people. And so we're very concerned and trying to find ways to divert those young people from those kinds of crimes. Number two, the relationship between the police and the communities the police serves is an issue. There is sometimes some friction and tension. I think that relations between the police and our communities has improved in the last year. I think that last year there were some big strains after the murder of George Floyd. But I think since then, there's been some healing and repair in those relationships. And that's really, really important because if the way that we solve crimes, the way that we keep crime low is that the police and the community work together. Even with all of the fancy technology that we have in the DA's office, the cameras and the microscopes and all the different instruments that we have, the way that most crimes are solved, or a very important piece of evidence, is someone calls the police and says, I heard something, I saw something. In order for people to be willing to call the police and say, I heard something, I saw something. They have to trust that the police will do a good job, will be fair, will be professional, will be respectful, will work hard. And they have to feel the same way that the DA's office will look at this case, apply the law fairly, and vigorously seek justice. So I try as much as I can to be a bridge, say, between law enforcement, between the police, and between the community that we serve. Things don't work well when the community does not trust the police. It's bad for the police, it's bad for the community, it's bad for all of us. Similarly, while I work very closely with the police departments, I'm not a police officer. And so I would say the relationship between the DA and the police is a collaborative relationship. We work together, but it's not cozy. So, and it's not cozy because I have a different role. The police can arrest someone, but unless my office files charges, the person goes free. And it's a wonderful thing about our country that these decisions about who is going to be in jail or who not, or those decisions are not made by people with guns and badges, but they're made by people using, pens or, these days, computer that we file the charges with. But so we have a different role. And of course, sometimes we prosecute police officers. So since I've been DA, there have been 53 occasions where we have prosecuted a police officer for doing something wrong on duty, something wrong off duty. And, we don't treat the police officers any better or any worse than anyone else. We treat them fairly. So that's why I would say the relationship is collaborative, but it's not cozy. And then I would talk a little bit about, let's say, diversity and what the DA's office looks like. So when I started in the DA's office in 1995, I came in with 8 other prosecutors, all men. And the office at that time was probably, 80%, 85% men, maybe more. So one huge change in our office is today, the office is about 50% men, 50% women in terms of the prosecutors. And you know what? It makes a big difference. Every room, whenever I'm in a meeting in the DA's office and I have to make a decision, some important decision about, are we going to file charges here, or are we going to have a different policy, or whatever the decision is, the people in that room, men, women, African American, Asian American, Latino, LGBTQ, it's a very diverse office. About 40% of our prosecutors are either African American, Asian, Latino, or LGBTQ. And I find that we make better decisions when we have a diverse group around us. In addition to that, I think that one of the special things about this valley, about Santa Clara County and Silicon Valley, is this is a place not only of great diversity, it's also a place of incredible excellence. Stanford, Santa Clara, San Jose State, Google, Apple, LinkedIn, Micro, it goes on and on. So I wanted the DA's office to reflect both the diversity and the excellence of this valley. Shortly after I was elected the first time, I went around to all the prosecutors in the office and I said, do you think that we are the Apple of DA's offices? Do you think that we're the Google of DA's offices? Meaning, right, are we excellent and innovative and always trying to get better and delivering great service? Most prosecutors understood what I was saying when I said, do you think that we're the Apple or the Google of DA's offices? One guy said, Well, our computers aren't as nice as theirs. Okay, you don't exactly get what I'm trying to say. So, so I think one of the things that has helped us become such a good DA's office is that it's a place of great diversity. But the last thing I would say is Marion mentioned that before I became a DA, I worked in private practice, in law firms in Los Angeles and Washington, DC. And, I didn't have the greatest experience at those law firms. There was a lot of yelling, there was screaming, there was crying, and I'm talking about the attorneys that work there. Like, so it wasn't such a nice place to work. And one of the things that's so important to me about the DA's office is that, well, number one, we're here to serve the public. We're public servants. So we want to be nice and respectful to everyone that we come in contact with. Attorneys, judges, police officers, witnesses, community members. And even when people are not nice and polite to us, which happens, right? When you get a subpoena to come to court, it's not a birthday party. It's not a wedding. It's probably like maybe a little worse than going to the dentist, right? So we know that it can be difficult and uncomfortable for people, but we always, as much as possible, want to respond respectfully and empathetically. But if we're going to treat the public fairly and respectfully, then we have to treat ourselves that way in the office, right? It doesn't work to have an organization where you're nice to the people that come into the office and meanwhile you're mean to everybody else. So one of the ways that when we bring new prosecutors into the office, one of the things we really emphasize is, the way to succeed here is to be a team player, to help out, to, help somebody if they need some help, to be nice to people, and to be a little bit humble and modest. That's actually what we want. A way not to succeed here is to yell and scream, to treat the support staff as lesser than you in some way. That's wrong. And to try to hog and take all the credit for things. I've said to people, like, we know who's doing a good job. You don't have to tell us all the time that you're doing a good job. We know. So that's a little bit of what the DA's office is like on the inside. And I thought at this point, Marion, I would take some questions maybe. So maybe you would hand the microphone to people?
Yeah, Phyllis Chai will do that.
Oh.
I have a question to begin with.
Okay.
I've heard about stores closing because of petty theft.
Yeah.
And
I'll
Can't hear you.
I'll repeat, if you can't, I'll repeat the question.
okay, and some people think that somebody could steal things a little bit every day. And the end is that the stores cannot stay open. Can you address the petty theft situation?
Sure. So Marion's question is about petty theft or shoplifting in different stores and how that may be causing some stores to close. So that is something that I have become aware of as happening in Oakland and in San Francisco. I'm not so aware of that happening here, but what I can say is, I was talking to a community group who referred to these petty thefts as $0 shopping. $0 shopping. I never heard it said that way before. My view about these things is, while petty theft is not as serious a crime as murder, it's still an important crime. You're still harming a shop owner, and it should be prosecuted. And we do prosecute petty theft cases. Sometimes the police are not able to catch the person, But when they are, we absolutely prosecute that. Now, a petty theft is not, it's not a prison case. It might be a case that we say the person, you need to make restitution, you need to pay back what you stole and make amends for the harm that you caused. And there may be weekend work that you do for that, cleaning up the side of the road, some kind of punishment. But, we don't want to overdo the punishment, but we also don't want to let people off like this. When it comes to any kind of crime, serious or not serious, felony or less serious misdemeanor, I think the most important thing is that individuals know that they will be caught and they will be swiftly punished. I think those are the two most important things. And then how long they're punished for, whether it's 3 months or 4 months or 1 year or 2 years, that's important, but it's not as important as that you're going to get caught and you're going to get punished quickly. And the way that we allow that to happen is by having enough police officers. And so while Los Gatos has, I would say, enough police officers for this city, it borders San Jose, right? San Jose is our largest city in the county, more than 1 million people in San Jose. And San Jose has the lowest police staffing of any large city in the United States. And so, crime doesn't just stay in San Jose, it spreads out. So one of the things that I think is so important is to have enough police officers to be able to deter crimes from happening. And then if they do happen, catch the person so they'll be held accountable.
Phyllis Chai will be going around, so if any questions, raise your hand.
We have a question in the chat.
So resident Bob Strain has asked, has the state's downgrading most thefts to misdemeanors become a license to steal?
Okay. So the question is, for thefts under $950, if you take something from a store less than $950, that is a misdemeanor. It used to be, before the law changed, it was a felony. So one thing about the law changing, the law changed in 2014. In 2014, the law said if you take something, I think the amount was less than $400, it's a misdemeanor. If you take something more than $400, it's a felony. And that dollar amount had remained the same for, I don't know, maybe 20 years or more. So if you just sort of applied inflation, right, the amount 20 years, if you take $400 and 20 years, so after inflation, you're probably somewhere around $950. Whether the crime of stealing something is a felony or a misdemeanor, remember what I said before, it has to do with the punishment. So that means how long the person might be punished for. It's still a crime either way. And the way that the police respond to petty thefts is the same, whether it was a misdemeanor or a felony. Meaning the conduct is the same, and some police departments have more resources and are able to give a very vigorous investigation for a shoplifting, and some police departments are overwhelmed and can't. And whether that shoplifting is a misdemeanor or felony, that's not what determines the police response. It's how many other things they are working on. So in terms of these kinds of retail thefts, I am concerned about them because in order to have a healthy community, right, you need police, you need parks, you need schools, you need businesses. You need businesses that provide services and pay taxes and give food and so forth. This is what you need. And when we have situations where groups of people organize themselves and go into a store and steal a lot of things, like what happened a few months ago at Stanford Shopping Mall. When we catch those people, and we will, they will be punished much more vigorously, because it's one thing to walk into a store and take $50 worth of something. Okay, that's bad. It's worse for 5 or 6 people to run into a store at the same time and take $20,000 worth of purses or whatever else was taken from Stanford. That organization indicates more criminal sophistication and more of a danger. And when those cases are solved, and they are solved, we prosecute them quite forcefully, actually.
I'm retired now, but I was a high school teacher. And one day, I saw that there was a group of my students, high school students, that were very excited because of what one student was telling the other students. And when I found out what it was, I was shocked. This one particular boy was talking about his experience as a shoplifter. And what was upsetting was the attitude that the other students showed of absolute admiration. I mean, they were admiring this guy for what he could steal. And I thought, we have to have some way to overcome that kind of attitude, because that's what kills us.
I agree with you, and there's good and important work that the DA and police can do to solve shoplifting crimes and hold, juveniles accountable in a way that's appropriate for, teenagers. But, the DA's office and the police department, right, they can't do anything. They can't raise our children. We don't raise people's children. And, ultimately, one of the reasons that I liked the parent project that we run so much, and there's other good programs too, I don't mean to say it's the only one, but I kind of think the building block of our society is the family. And so if there's, one or two parents and they love their children and they raise their children with good values, don't take what doesn't belong to you, don't hurt other people, work hard, that child's going to grow up and be in good shape, if that's the message that child's getting at home. Mary mentioned that my wife is a lawyer. Yes, but she's a judge now, actually. So I stand up every time she comes in. And when I did that the first time, she didn't laugh the first time, and she has not laughed ever since. So my wife is a judge in our county. She does not hear criminal cases because I'm the DA. And I mean, if she did hear criminal cases, then it would be like a TV show, right? Where everybody's, interested. But she does hear juvenile dependency cases, which is juvenile dependency. So juvenile dependency is when when social workers have to remove a child from the home because there's domestic violence, there's drug use, that they're hurting the children, these kinds of things. And so she sees a lot of children, right, that are growing up in homes that aren't so good. And it's hard as a society. We do as much as we can to try to strengthen and support those children. But I think everybody knows that it's hard to find a substitute for, a mother or father that loves you and is going to raise you well. So I'm not shocked to hear that there were some of your high school students bragging about shoplifting. And what I hope is that at some point, one or more of them was caught and had to explain why they did that to their parents, to the owner of that store. And I hope that they come from a home where their parents would be, would want to discipline them for that. And the last thing I'll say on this point is I have two daughters that are in college now. My younger daughter, Naomi, when she was 16, she just started driving. She got her driver's license and she was driving near our house. And she, did a rolling stop at a stop sign, didn't come to a full stop. Police officer is there. I live up in Los Altos, pulls her over. And he says, you didn't stop at the stop sign. And, my daughter said, yeah, that's true. And then he's looking at her license and he says, Rosen, huh? Rosen. Is your dad the DA? And she says, yeah. And he says to her, well, I hope he's not too angry at me for writing you this ticket. To which my daughter said, oh, no, don't worry. He'll be much angrier at me about this. He's not angry at you. He'll be angry at me about this. And so, it comes to how we raise our children. Is there another question?
Thank you very much, Pietro. This was really, really an excellent overview.
Good news, you have on to you.
I just have a comment about the period of time where we have had all these masks on. I would say it makes your job 20 times more difficult to identify criminals when they're walking around masked. It used to be that they masked when they were going to rob a store, but now everybody's masked, and so there you are.
Sure. So the question is, now that we're all walking around with masks, not just the bank robbers, does it make it more difficult to solve crimes? And I would say a little bit, but one thing that has happened in the last 5 years is that more and more people and businesses have cameras either in their stores or in their homes that, look at their front door, look out on the street. And so really all over our county, whenever a crime is committed, often, not every time, but often, a part of that crime, either the person going to the store or leaving or the car they were in, is on video. And some of the video is, 15 years ago, the video was very grainy and difficult to read. The quality of the video, the images is much, much better. And so that, I think, counteracts the mask because we still might see the kind of clothing that someone is wearing, which can be distinctive. Of course, if we get a glimpse of the car, that's very helpful. And there are some cameras that are in different cities where the camera is actually trained to make sure it gets the license plate. And that, of course, is a huge identifier. So that's one way we counteract things. And another thing I would just mention that we're very proud of here is every time someone uses a gun to commit any kind of crime, when that gun and those bullets are recovered, wherever it is in the county, it's taken to our crime lab and we put the gun and all the shell casings in a database. It's sort of like a it's like with fingerprints or with DNA. And what happens is when we collect the guns and shell casings from crimes everywhere, we get links. We realize, oh, wait a minute, this gun was in, Los Gatos yesterday as part of an armed robbery, but it turns out it was also in Milpitas 2 months ago because we have shell casings that match both places. Well, that's very helpful information for us in terms of trying to solve crimes. And so that effort literally has led to dozens of robberies and murders and attempted murders being solved. So I would just say, I know all of us are looking forward to the day where we don't have to wear masks all the time. You know, people tend to come up to me and want to say hello. You know, I often look like, I mean, not how many men are wearing suit and ties anymore, so I sort of stand out, so people will come up to me, but it's hard for me to recognize people like this and not this. So I get it. There was another question back there, yeah.
A question about the shooting at the Valley Transportation.
I don't know if that's
I don't
on.
think it's on. Okay. About the shooting at the Valley Transportation Authority. That was obviously very traumatic and terrible for the people involved. And I'm glad that things are being done to assist those people. At the same time, though, there are many, many people who have been inconvenienced, to say the least, by complete shutdown of the whole system. And it's been several months now. I wonder what you can say about that, and is this unusual, and where are we going?
So the question was about, on the one hand, this terrible shooting at the Valley Transportation Authority, and service hasn't completely, they haven't gone back to full service. In fact, a lot of things are still closed. Honestly, I don't work for Valley Transportation Authority. I don't know when they will be back up and running. I agree that it makes things very difficult for people that rely on the buses and the trains. I'm not sure when they'll be up to full speed. And honestly, just along these lines, it was reported a couple days ago. Well, one thing that just to know is my office is about a block from where the shooting happened. So it's just very, it's just a constant reminder of what had happened. Well, a couple days ago, an employee of the Valley Transportation Authority drove to the site where the murder happened and killed himself. And so that then sort of ripples out, and that may make it take a little bit longer to start the trains again. I mean, I'm just being honest. So I hope they start soon, but I really don't know when they will begin. And I guess what I would say is there's just a lot of effects from a mass shooting like this. There's the human cost, and then there's other people that are, I would say, more than just inconvenienced. I mean, people that rely on VTA to go to work, that's now a real hardship for them as well. And so just for me, it's why I always sort of think, okay, what else could we do differently to try to not have this happen? And we're doing our best.
About the recall.
There's one behind you that I'll get.
Hi, I have actually two questions. Oh, no, it's not a lot. I don't know, maybe I could just ask you really loudly.
I'll repeat it.
Okay. One is about ghost guns and how much of a burden is that for everyone and how we alleviate that. And the other thing is that a number of years ago, with several different groups at different times, we visited the crime lab
extremely interesting trip.
Okay. Two questions. The first was about what are called ghost guns. These are firearms, rifles or pistols, where the parts are bought separately over the internet and sent to someone's house, and that individual then assembles the firearm. The reason we call them ghost guns is there is nothing identified, there's no serial number on this. So if you go to a gun shop and you buy a gun, it has a serial number and it can be traced. Buying a ghost gun is much, much more difficult to trace because the components of the gun have no numbers or markings on them. So we have seen more and more and more ghost guns used in murders and attempted murders than before. There is some legislation federally to address this, but it hasn't been passed yet or it hasn't taken effect. I know there are some efforts to try to address it, but it is a big problem. The second point you'd asked is, over the years, you and maybe some others have gone on a tour of the crime lab that we have. And yes, we still offer tours of the crime lab. It probably will be easier for us to do tours when we have less COVID around, but we do tours. We do tours for retirement communities like this. We do it for high schools. We do it for Rotary. We're more than happy to do it. And it is, there's just a lot of really kind of neat and cool stuff there. And the person that leads the tour is often our crime lab director, Ian Fitch, and he's originally from England. So you get like a nice accent leading the tour as well. So when things calm down a little bit with COVID, if you or others would like a tour, you can contact me directly. My email is everywhere. It's in my phone, like you just call the DA's office or email me and we'll make that happen. We're happy to. Maybe one more question and then.
I have one question in the chat.
Okay,
Can you make any comments about the controversy surrounding Laurie Smith?
Okay, can I make any comments about the controversy surrounding Sheriff Smith? Not really. As has been publicly noted, the DA's office, we have indicted a number of people in a bribery scheme related to getting a concealed weapons permit, permission to carry a gun concealed. And we've indicted the undersheriff at the time, who's the number 2 in the sheriff's office, a sheriff's captain, and a number of other prominent individuals. And, that's really all I can say about it.
Either I can borrow Marion's microphone, or can you hear me if I shout?
Yes.
Judy Lovell had sent out and wanted me to tell you that because of the number of candidates that are listed on this recall ballot that you are getting, there is information on ballotpedia.org, BALLOTPEDIA.org. On the main page, trending articles, and on the right side is the Gavin Newsom recall, and there are statements by all of the people that are listed on your ballot. So that's some help to you.
Fantastic.
Along with that, the ballot is very confusing to say the least. And if you want the governor to stay, vote no. I know that's crazy, but if you want them to say, vote no, and whether you vote yes or no, choose from the other candidates that are there. There are only about 22 that you need to find out about. That this voters edge.
I'm not one of those candidates.
Voters edge is one way, and then there's also Ballotpedia in order to find out about the runners. And good luck in looking it all over. Not easy. Yes.
I had an email from somebody who asked me, why can't we write in Governor Newsom's name on the ballot? Can somebody comment on that?
I might hear her.
Oh, the question was, could you, in addition to voting on whether or not to recall the governor, also then write the governor's name in under alternate candidate?
No,
I think the answer, I just think the answer is no. I don't exactly know why.
No,
but I
you
just
can't
think
do
so.
that. Yeah, but good question, because this thing is so confusing. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming out. I think we have gotten much more information that the office just does not arrest people and put them in jail. That is far more than that. The office reaches out to the community and tries to prevent crime, tries to prevent having new jails built in order to put people in there, and also tries to do something about the sentences of the people who have been arrested. And a lot of the program has to do with our DA, just how far it goes in really helping our community. So let's thank our wonderful DA for coming out and talking to us, and hope to have you all again.
Thank you very much.
I just want to show it, it's on this page here, and then it's on that. I know, but. I can't get it. I'll have to record that.
Yeah.
And she'll have to record.
Was interesting, yeah.
Thanks, Marion. Yeah. You want to look at?
Barry, that was a really good catch. To bring him here. Because he did a very good presentation, what the DA is all about. Pardon? Oh, really? Oh, okay, so you have to take this outside. Yeah, that's wonderful.